India's superstars are battered, bruised, abused. They have broken bones, pulled a muscle or two, suffered bleeding from swab tests gone wrong, been victims of false positives, and the story I've found most amusing this year so far. They've gotten irritated because they were forced to make their own bets. And we are only 14 days into the new year. I'm Mir Vasavda and Shivani Naik is in the house with us today to talk about all our cricketers and shuttlers have got to go through in Brisbane and Bangkok in today's episode of Game Time. Shivani, welcome. And would you be grumpy if you were a superstar athlete and had to make do with average quarantine food, clean your toilets, make your own bed?
I think I'd be extremely grumpy if people knew that I wasn't doing these things already. So the fact that has been revealed now, that sports stars do not actually make their own beds, might annoy me a little.
थोड़ा expose हो गए.
थोड़ा ज़्यादा ही.
Shashank, I'll bring you in a bit early. Now, we discussed last time about the whole privilege that these guys enjoy. Would you be happy making your own bed if you were like earning $1 crore a week?
Yeah, if I'm being truly honest, maybe I would be a little grumpy. Maybe I would want people to make my bed if I'm earning that much, and if I can afford to pay someone to do it. But in this situation, I suppose if there is no one else and I have to make it, I'll just suck it up and do it and not complain about it. Inside, maybe I'll be thinking, oh, kash koi hota jo mera bed bana deta. But I won't. I'll try not to, let others know what I'm thinking.
Certainly not. See, I mean, the only reason that we'll kind of give them an exemption from all these things is because they've gone through a hell of a lot in the last few weeks, right? Most disconcerting was the whole episode last weekend where Jasprit Bumrah and Mohammad Siraj claimed to have been racially abused. Now, Shivani, we obviously, I mean, there has to be a kadi ninda of all these, on such a behavior. But there are a couple of aspects to this. One that we touched upon in the Express Delivery episode earlier this week. And I'd like to pick your brains on that. Do you think this whole thing that Siraj did of stopping the match right then and there to call out his abusers, do you think it's one of those significant moments in sport which will be remembered? Because so far, cricketers have just silently taken whatever has been thrown at them from the stands. This is one of those rare occasions where they stopped playing until the spectators were thrown out of the stadium. So how big a deal is that?
No, absolutely. It's very big. Considering these were Australian crowds, this was an Indian cricketer. Both cricketing nations have come a long way in terms of where they stand with respect to each other. There have been generations of Indian cricketers who would have been abused racially or otherwise before this. So for an Indian cricketer standing at the boundary to put his foot down and say that we are walking up to his captain and sending out the message that we are not going to continue if you continue to intimidate me, it is a very non-subtle form of intimidation from the crowd. They might see it as banter, but a sports person should not be subjected to this. So it's long due. What happened should have happened much earlier. Sports persons are there to play, to give their best, to win. They're not there to take crap from the audience.
Yeah, and I was talking about this to Mr. Pyara Pawar. Now, he has been at the forefront of fighting racism in football. He's working very closely with UEFA, with FIFA. One thing that he pointed out was this whole tribalism of sport. In football especially, he mentioned about these rivalries which go back hundreds of years, and then teams and their fans trying to get the slightest possible advantage, and they see racist slurs as a way of gaining an advantage over their opponent by disintegrating them mentally. Now, as cricket develops this kind of a rivalry, as India grows as a power in cricket, we are seeing IPL, which is now very fiercely competitive. Do you see any such tribalism in cricket?
In terms of the spectators,
Spectators, the rivalries, and trying to gain some advantage through unfair means?
no, absolutely exists for sure. Whether it is necessary, whether it is needed by two equally matched teams is debatable. Whether it actually even has an impact on the opponent when you're trying to kind of mess with their heads, even that is highly debatable. I mean, it can spur some people on to do better. Like Ashwin, I think, gave it back. Even the sort of abuse that a crowd can mete out to a fielder who's at the boundary, some people can just block that out. So it's I just find it totally unnecessary. It's needless noise. And the sooner the spectators realize this, the better for the game. They're there to watch, they're not there to be heard.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of crazy, right? Because those guys are out there to do their jobs, which is to compete and in the process entertain. And then they have to make do with all that's thrown at them from the stands. But Ismay Shivani, like, of course, like we said, that it is highly condemnable what happened. But from an Indian point of view, how important is it to look inwards? Because there have been instances in the past, most recently, when the whole thing about IPL happened. Should Indians also be aware of their behavior, their actions?
It totally calls for introspection. I don't believe that Indian crowds have been the best behaved. This is not just crowds from non-test centers. Indian players have been abused by their own fans, even in test centers which are called knowledgeable, quote unquote. It happens in Mumbai, it happens in Chennai, it definitely happens in Bangalore. So certainly, I think there is no point in living in this delusion that it is only an Australia crowd problem. It definitely happens in India as well.
Yeah, and in India, it's goes beyond crowd problem as well, right? I mean, when Darren Sammy called out his teammates in the IPL, I mean, we didn't hear even a murmur, let alone a full-blown conversation on racism in sport. But it was just completely brushed under the carpet by the Indian cricket fraternity. So these issues, then it comes to a point where we go to Australia and we call out their racial abuse, but there's absolutely no conversation about what's happening back home. How do you deal with that? How do you draw a balance there?
The silence after Sammy pointed that out was absolutely shocking. The fact that this happened not like decades ago, but he was talking about a fairly recent thing. So for there to be complete silence from the entire cricketing fraternity, from his contemporaries, from his teammates in Hyderabad, as well as there are legends of the game in India who could have actually taken this opportunity to point out and stand by somebody from their fraternity. But that did not happen. Reasons are best known to them. It was an opportunity lost for sure.
And do you think, like we spoke briefly about how this could be a turning point in cricket in the sense that a match being stopped right then and there to call out the abusers. But do you think this will also be a moment where India will introspect, or do you think will we just be washed away in this whole wave of nationalism right now?
You know, like I think Sammy himself said after the whole thing was put out that he saw it as an opportunity for Indians to reflect silently, to kind of ensure that it doesn't ever happen again, and without any outright confrontation. He did not really go hammer and tongs against what had happened to him. So he dealt with it in a very poised, very poignant way. But I think the message was that Indians need to understand that this is happening, that it happens both ways. And the absolute reckoning might not have happened in a very public way of somebody being pulled up and asked to apologize. But I'm guessing the message has gone down. And if there are repeats of such behavior, I don't think the next time foreign cricketers are going to keep quiet about it.
Yeah, it'll be very surprising if they keep quiet about it now after this episode. But Shivan, just to sum up this discussion, now you've seen a lot of sport in India and abroad. You've covered very different sports with multiple nationalities taking part in it. Uh, have you witnessed anything like this in India or in abroad where I'll give an example. Like in the Indian hockey team, for example, there has been a player who was constantly bullied by his teammates because of the color of his skin, uh, his caste, and it happened to an extent that he was completely gone mentally, and it affected his performance. Have you witnessed anything like that? It's just such a sorry story because that player, I mean, he was primed to do so much, but he could never justify his potential because of all that bullying.
Yeah, sportsmen by definition are expected to kind of suck it up and accept banter, accept anything that comes their way as locker room talk. It probably is also one of the reasons why they don't put their feet down on these very, very casually racist things that come their way. Not just racist, but anything that is intended to quietly bully someone. And this happens in teams. I wouldn't want to get into the team dynamics, but I have witnessed crowds watching the Indian cricket team train and throwing insults Ishant Sharma's and VVS Lakshman's ways. Now, these are Lakshman is a highly respected, a highly revered cricketer in India, and for a crowd to actually say things to him when he was probably going through a rough patch, that was shocking for me. I thought some cricketers were completely above being abused by home crowds. So this was shocking. Indian crowds tend to do it to their own players as well. So when they do it to foreigners, it really doesn't surprise me. But yeah, there is a recognition that this is a problem now. So once you spell it out, you expect people to learn. We might see better behaved crowds. But again, unless somebody is actually punished, unless abusive crowds are thrown out of the stadium like it happened in Australia, I don't know. It's difficult to say whether this has had a lasting impact.
No, absolutely. I mean, I was in the stands in 2007 when the cops threw out 4 youngsters from the Wankhede Stadium for abusing Andrew Simons. And I don't remember it was 4 or 6, but something like that. But yeah, I mean, it's been 13, 14 years since that incident, and little seems to have changed. And we can hope that, again, this can be that turning point. But that's it for part 1. We'll be back with the second part right after this.
If you're someone who likes to be updated about the news, then you know how important it can be not only to find a trustworthy source, but also a place that can give you the right context and helps you see the bigger picture. And there is perhaps no other place that does this better than Indian Express's Explained section. It has everything you need to know to understand the news better. Explained keeps you on top of the ever-changing news cycle and helps you see the larger trends that you wouldn't ordinarily by just following the headlines. You can log on to indianexpress.com/explained, access their coverage 24/7, and find in-depth analysis by the right experts. Explained by Indian Express, where news that matters is explained by experts who know the subject. Now, back to the show.
So, Thailand Open started this last week, and it is the year's first international badminton tournament. And, well, it wasn't a smooth start. Shivani, how did it begin? I mean, false start would be an understatement. So, can you just take us through whatever has happened in Bangkok and what is this tournament?
Oh, it began badly. I mean, bold and underlined. It began terribly for Indians. A whole lot of them were playing a competitive match, were supposed to be playing a competitive tournament after a long time. Most of them played at the All England. So that's about 9 months. A few of them did turn up for a week at Denmark, but this was supposed to be the comeback tournament from the pandemic. Badminton, bizarrely, is still completing its 2020 season. So this is officially a part of the last season, which kind of carried over into the first month of 2021. And it started badly simply because Saina Nehwal, Parupalli Kashyap, and HS Pranoy ended up delivering positives in the third COVID test that they were subjected to at Bangkok. They had given 2 negatives before, so that made it all the more exasperating because it was difficult to understand, considering they were in a bubble. Things just went downhill from there for the next 10 hours on the first day. Saina was about to take to the warm-up courts when she was pulled out by the organizers and asked to go sit in an ambulance and taken to a hospital. She tried explaining to the volunteer that this couldn't have been because she had already tested positive for COVID in December. The chances of her testing positive again were highly unlikely, but she was taken to the hospital and her name was withdrawn from the draw. So that's how it started.
And it never really then got back on track as far as India is concerned, right? The results weren't that great. I mean, Sindhu lost in the first round, Saina lost in the second round, if I'm not wrong. Srikanth and Kashyap pulled out with injuries. The doubles pair of Satvik Sairaj, Rankireddy and Chirag Shetty were also eliminated early. Shivani, how much should we read into these results right now?
I wouldn't be too worried about the results on court, to be very honest. Sindhu was coming back to badminton after a very long break. She looked in decent shape fitness-wise. Of course, the entire finishing was lacking, but that's not something that's new to Sindhu early in the season. Saina, of course, lost in the second round right now, a few hours back, and she also played a 3-setter. She's not looking too shabby either. With Kashyap, of course, the spate of injuries, it just continues. Every time he starts to take off, there is an injury which pulls him down. Srikanth was expected to start well because he was injury-free in this entire period, but it's not something that is very, very serious. But yeah, he has pulled a calf. So there is that.
I know you often said that Sindhu is a player who peaks in big tournaments, and obviously with 2020 and the pandemic and the whole change in calendar, Olympics in July, August this year will be her big target, as is the case with all other Indian shuttlers. Now, just if you can take us through the status of Indian badminton players vis-a-vis their qualification for the Olympics. Now, has Sindhu made it? Has Saina made it? What is their status right now?
Sindhu, we can safely say, has qualified. She is in the top 7 right now. So top 16 qualify directly. And for a second shuttler in the same category, you need 2 from the same country to actually be in the top 16. So Sindhu is pretty, her situation is very clear. Saina, of course, she'll need to do really well when the qualifications start in March with the Swiss Open. So as such, these tournaments aren't a part of the official qualification for Tokyo. So they can be used by players to kind of get into the groove. And that's exactly what is happening. For Sindhu, she's contested every single big final of the last 4 years since Rio, the World Championships, and she's won the World Tour finals as well. She is the sort of player who peaks towards the big tournament, and for her, clearly, 2021 will be about the Olympics. So it's early season for her. The biggest challenge for Sindhu going forward is staying away from injury. She's never really missed a tournament in the last few years because of injury. So that needs to continue. That's probably the only thing that she needs to worry about.
Yeah, and I think injuries is something that a lot of players will worry about between now and July. I'm also interested to know the status of Satvik, Sairaj, and Chirag, because the doubles pair have really had some eye-catching performances in the last couple of seasons. How are they placed, and what should we expect from them?
I think they have the security of qualification. They are world number 10 right now. They've done well. So that part is assured. They can actually work towards preparing for the Olympics. Now, having a men's doubles pair at the Olympics is something that is extremely exciting. Okay, that's probably that's the most exciting category in badminton, where you have the fastest athletes, the strongest athletes. So men's doubles has that sort of anticipation to it, and to have an Indian pair there is great on its own. To actually have a pairing that could be in contention makes it all the more better, because they have beaten the top pairings, which is something that you need in the run up to the Olympics to have the confidence to beat the top guys. Obviously, not the world number ones, but save the world number one. They've beaten every other pairing, beaten or come very close in the third set. That is important, which also means that there is hunger. You know, they've not really won a Super Series title as of now, but there is that whole thing to prove themselves, to keep working towards something, so that they know that they are not the finished products, that there is always something to improve. And that makes them extremely exciting prospect at Tokyo.
And very quickly, I mean, we don't know right now the status of the Olympics and whether it'll happen. But does the whole qualification process make you nervous? I mean, we've seen what happened in Thailand, and this is the year's first tournament. It doesn't seem likely that the whole restrictions will go away anytime soon. Uh, what do you think of the qualification process, and how does it look right now?
It's going to be a nightmare. The fact that qualifications spread across two continents. I mean, there's the Swiss Open. I think there are a few tournaments in Europe, and then they come to Asia, and it'll be exciting for India because India hosts the last of the qualification tournaments. This is end April and May. But the entire travel makes me extremely nervous. The fact that they are going to be hopping from one tournament to another, desperate to get the points, but also knowing that it could be dangerous. So it's a nightmare scenario. I'm glad they are the players. We are only writing.
Yeah, and if there is another incident of false positives, and we don't know how that will play out in the future as well, it just makes everything so uncertain. Shashank, I'll like to bring you in again. Now, as someone who is not an avid sports watcher, how do you make sense of crowd abusing players? What was your reaction through that entire episode?
I mean, I just think it wasn't surprising that the somebody in the crowd was doing that. I think it's uncalled for. I mean, we were talking about how it shouldn't happen to sports players. I mean, it shouldn't happen to anyone, right? Like, this kind of thing shouldn't, in an ideal world, shouldn't exist. What did come as a surprise, of course, was that the match was stopped. I thought, oh, that was like, I when I heard it, I couldn't believe that had happened. And yeah, I think those points about introspections are very fair. That this is something that Indians and people all across, we have enough to reflect on, not just racism, but even in India we have our own problems. We have casteism, so there are different layers in which we would need to, like, everybody would need to introspect. I think
so. And look, I mean, what we've all been trying to say is that Siraj has led the way, and he's done something that no cricketer has done before. So it'll be nice if everyone takes a leaf out of it and then reacts strongly and calls out racism. Doesn't matter whether it's in Australia, in India, or in England. So that's about it. But yeah, I mean, it's been.
There was one thing I wanted to add. The fact that this entire racial reckoning is happening in the same year as the pandemic, it's probably the best year for crowds and for sports people also to realize that playing sport can be extremely difficult. It's a huge privilege that they get to watch it and that they get to play. So to ruin a situation like that, to ruin what makes them, what defines them, is insulting to sport itself. So it's not surprising that both things are happening concurrently, that pandemic has stopped a lot of sport, and you have this issue that is now right in the middle of every sporting event, and it is being acknowledged, and people are doing something about it, realizing that playing sport can get very rare, like it happened last year.
Yeah, and it's this realization that gives us hope. Look, I mean, we are running out of time for today, but we will be discussing these topics and many more in coming episodes of Game Time. Do listen, do tune in and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get it. Thanks for listening, and see you all on the other side.
You were listening to Express Sports by the Indian Express. This week's show was edited and mixed by Joshua Thomas and produced by me, Shashank Bhargav. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.